Now, what I want to do today is to hear your ideas about your second paper specifically, and also about your work in the course, what ideas of a general as well as a particular kind that you may have got on the subject of philosophy in film and other media. Above all, emphasizing the paper and ways in which it can still be improved. As you know, I gave everyone an automatic extension, provided that person arrived for the last meeting. And there's one person still absent, if that person doesn't arrive, that's different from all of you, and therefore use this as a last occasion to make your paper as good as you possibly can, and I will try to accommodate in terms of when you can hand it in, and of course give you advice about the contents as I have been all along. And then after that, we will watch the Seventh Seal. I will also give you a very, very brief introduction to it, particularly since it's related to last week's reading, which I hope you've all been able to do by now. So why don't we start on your second paper, and we can begin with Miguel, who's right here. Speaking loud enough for everybody to hear, including the camera.
Well, what do you want to know?
Well, what's the paper on? What is the problem, the thesis that you're pursuing? How are you developing it? What's your outside research? How can the class or I help you with it? And in general, how does it bring things together that we've been doing throughout the term, since that is the main function of the second paper?
So I kind of went away from anything we did in class and decided to focus on Rebel Without a Cause.
Amplify.
I'm doing it on Rebel Without a Cause,
Mm-hmm.
and just dealing with how teenagers deal with death.
In relation to what in the course?
In relation to the death article you wrote, the meaning of death.
Oh, okay, then tell me.
There's Hagen.
Could you, Ramon, could you cut right there? And don't worry about talking too loud. Okay, begin again. All right, then you're going to talk about...
I'm actually doing it on death and love, because love has been a protruding theme like throughout like a lot of movies we have seen. Like,
go ahead. Well, you understand.
Yeah, so I mean, just like the two characters in that movie, they kind of start off being strangers and then they become lovers, and they both have to deal with death, like at the end of the film and in the middle of the film. Because originally the girl's boyfriend dies, and then she really doesn't deal with the death. She like kind of forgets about him. And it's just interesting to me that.
How does the reading on death and also the love of life,
right. There was
I presume,
how
does that come in?
You talked about this, I forget who it was, Hegel something, that he has people deal with death in a certain way. They forget that they forget about their own death and as a means to deal with things.
Hegel? How does Hegel come into it?
I forget his name.
Heidegger?
Heidegger, yeah. The inactive reasoning, or I forget.
Inauthentic?
Inauthentic, yes. That's, yeah.
Okay, what is the concept of the inauthentic in Hegel? In Heidegger?
Well, he talks about how people they will kind of brush it aside and think that they're invincible and they're not gonna die. They forget about death pretty much, so they kind of push it aside and forget about it, and then just keep going with their lives, pretending that they're not gonna die.
Does Does that mean one has to sit and brood all the time?
No, no. I mean, you go on with your life. You do it. I mean, with the things you want to do, but you don't. I mean, you don't have to brood.
Is Hamlet less inauthentic because he has the speech about to be or not to be, on Heidegger's view? No, you're just shaking. You're just shaking. I didn't hear you shaking your head. All right. Why don't you continue? How do you develop the paper?
Well, I started off by explaining the relationship between the two characters and how it developed throughout the film. Like at first they're strangers, in the middle they become kind of friends, and then by the end they're lovers. And then the relationship of them dealing with the two main deaths of the film.
But so far all you've referred to is a kind of summarization of the plot. That's not what the paper is about.
Right.
It's about the two dimensions that you read in the first week that are present in my book, Reality Transformed, the technical and the meaningful. All right, what are the technical aspects that you analyze?
I have to go back.
Yeah, okay. That's why I wanted to have this conversation, so you would focus your attention on things like that. What about the meaningful aspect? What is the meaning of that movie?
I think it's just coping with being a teenager. This is the main meaning of that movie, coping with being like young adults dealing with...
What sense do you make out of the title?
Rebel without a cause. It's like kids rebelling against adults, pretty much.
No, but that's a cause.
Oh, right, yeah.
So there's something in the nature of that society, that community, those individuals at their particular stage of adolescent life, right, in relation to the school that they go to, in relation to their companions, and the people, and the pecking order, and all of that, which they're rebelling against. But what exactly is it that they're rebelling against? And in what sense do they do it without a cause? We do see, particularly the James Dean character, having lots of troubles with his parents. And the question then is, what do they represent in his eyes? Is there a cause that he is standing up to as against them? Remember the year it was made?
55.
What is the significance of that date in terms of California culture and history at that point? Because it takes place in California. That would be something could be of relevance, not necessarily, but as a matter of fact, it is. You know, what was the most obvious cause that would have been relevant at that period? When was the last sizable war that the United States was in? Anyone else?
Iraq.
What?
Iraq.
1955.
1955.
Not Iraq.
Korean War.
The Korean War, yeah. And the Korean War itself had to be seen in the context of the aftermath of World War II. And above all, in World War II, there was a cause that everyone recognized in a way that nothing like it has ever happened before or since. In the case of the Korean War, there was the general American belief that the communists were ready to take over the world, and they had to be stopped outside of the United States, and as close to their borders as possible, first Korea and then later on Vietnam. And the communists then included the Chinese, who were more or less in alliance with the Russians, right? So this was thought of as a threat, and there was a cause. Now, 3 years later, the movie is made, the war is over, and you get this period of affluence. And what do you make of that?
I can't really see a relation to the war. I mean, other than the communist thing, like him wearing a red jacket.
But what was happening in this country? Well, very briefly, because this is your paper, not mine, an inability to cope with the affluence, particularly on the part of the young who had never been impoverished and were growing up into it, like the characters in that movie. That was a problem. It didn't give them a cause, but there was enough together with the usual conflict between the generations to cause someone to be a rebel. Will this help you to write it better? In terms of technique, which I haven't said anything about, and in terms of meaning, correct? Right? Anybody else want to suggest something to Miguel, or bring in your own work at this point? Okay, Edward.
Okay, for my paper, I decided to write on the seventh seal, and basically I'm highlighting the ideological contrast presented by the knight and his squire. And as you watch the movie, you can see that upon realizing that he's about to die, the knight is really trying to look for something to make his life meaningful, whereas the squire just kind of has this great sense of humor towards death the entire time. And I found,
well, I don't know if it's humor, a sarcastic attitude.
Right. And so I found that this is in line with some of the philosophies on death that were presented by certain philosophers, such as Klages and Simmel, in reference to the...
No, say again?
Klages, I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
Let me look at it.
K-L-A-G-S, probably a foreign origin.
Oh, good. This is outside research.
Right, outside research.
I don't know anything about Klages, if that's the way to pronounce it. Correct? Georg Simmel I do know about. Where did you find this material?
I believe you referenced that.
Right. No, that's fine. Okay.
So,
maybe you should show it to the others. So you probably have the one copy from the library.
right.
Anyway, now you know where it is, if anybody wants to use it. Could you push closer to... no, well, actually, no, I think it would be better if you move a little more. Move closer. Please continue.
So in this book, Choron states that Klages believes that an individual's existence is a constant dying of sort, and that all life will tend to lead to annihilation. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. And then Simmel saying that that should not be considered life-threatening, and it's simply the last stage in the life cycle. And I feel that this is somewhat consistent with the views of the squire, in that he is not really pursuing a meaning, and he's always providing like a contrast to the knight, who seems to be following more of Heidegger's that death, that the knowledge of being towards death will cause for a search for meanings of sorts. It says that he says that the realization of incoming death can make men rise from above a day-to-day activity, above just being a commonplace person. And you kind of see that transformation in the knight when he realizes that death is coming for him. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was kind of the contrast on how people that are dying perceive death and the people that are alive. And you can see this between the knight and the squire, and then the two actors. Because as the knight saves them from dying, then you can immediately see that once death has passed them over, their attitude changes and they go on living with their child and whatnot.
The family, yeah. The two actors are the family. Well, it seems as if you know what you're doing. How far have you got on the paper?
I've just started basically writing about the characterization between the two, knight and the squire.
But I mean, how close are you to finishing it?
Oh, I'm about
Okay.
halfway.
How can we help?
I was just wondering if there is a stronger way to correlate the knight and the squire's thing with the family's thing, because it kind of seems not completely related. And
You've seen the movie only once.
right.
Seeing it today may give you new ideas. And very briefly, there are a couple of things I'll be saying before we watch the movie. In general, I think you probably are on the right track. You remember that movie, together with the outside reading, is sufficient for the second paper because you will not have been able to watch in class the Seventh Seal until after the paper is due today. So that's all right. Going back to Miguel now, I forgot to ask what outside research you're doing.
I need to look for something. I just looked at random.
No, you've got to do.
Yeah, no.
You've got to do something substantial, well, it depends on whether you emphasize the technique or the meaningfulness. For the technique, there are various things in, for instance, the anthology edited by Cohen and Mast called Film Theory and Criticism. Very fat anthology, and you can find material in there. I don't mean you have to read the whole anthology. One article, if you handle it properly, remember that's true of all of you, you've got to analyze carefully your outside research. You can't just name drop and you've got to give complete references to the pages to indicate that you really have worked at it. But one or two articles will be sufficient, especially since the movie is outside the course. All right? All right, anything either of you want to say that we can help with? All right, then, Ramon?
Okay.
Stop. Ramon. All right, the next is David. Tell me about your paper.
I was going to use the meaning of death concept again, and I found this really good article. I was interested in what you said about Heidegger. Is that how you pronounce it, Heidegger? And then his position, because that was like a really interesting position. So I found this really good paper that outlines his whole concept of time. So I was thinking about outlining his position, and then I don't really agree with it. I like the Santayana's view about life and death as opposed to Heidegger's. So I was going to write a response to Heidegger's position, and then I was going to extend that because I think Heidegger says like death is very intertwined in life, and you have to confront death to be authentic and live life. And I think it'd be interesting to analyze his views with respect to religion and suicide, because I think if you believe God controls your death, you can't really be authentic because you have to control it. Like you have because if God controls it, like you're not going to be authentic. And then would suicide be the ultimate confrontation of death, and like his views and other philosophers?
Okay, but this isn't going to be a paper on Heidegger and Singer. It's going to be a paper on philosophy and film.
Yeah.
Okay, so which is it? How are we going to do that?
I was going to watch Seventh Seal. I haven't watched it yet. I was going to hopefully tie it to the Seventh Seal.
I'm not catching what you're saying.
I was going to. Well, I haven't seen the Seventh Seal yet, so I was going to.
Oh, you thought you would use the Seventh Seal?
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
And
The
so
Seventh Seal lends itself
Yeah.
to that, and that's why I wanted you to watch it. Also, since there are now at least two who are going to deal with the Seventh Seal, remember that in the course we've been dealing with the nature of myth and the nature of myth in filmmaking, so that there was the Pygmalion myth, there was the Lady Eve that we started out with, that is the biblical myth, the myth of creation. There was the myth about absolute knowledge in relation to the turn of the screw, and then the opera, and then the variety of male-female myths that come into Washington Square. Right? I haven't touched on all of the films, but there's always a film that is an anchor to these quasi-philosophical investigations. What would be the way in which you would use, do you think, oh, well, you can't tell yet until you've seen the movie.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe like the myth of death almost, and the movie, from what I've learned in the movie, what you talked to it, and a little bit I read about it, is that death comes take the night. And if death comes take the night, like there's a religious aspect to that, so does the knight control his own death? Is he authentic in Heidegger's view, something along those lines?
One thing you might want to think about in terms of comparable myths, there's a myth that death is meaningful, which is related to the religious view, that death is the transition to another world which is benign because there is a good God who has arranged it that way. And of course, whether or not people believe in God, everyone would like the idea that the grave is not the end, right? But maybe that whole way of thinking is a myth in the broad sense of being a poetic fiction rather than something authentic. The fact that something, I mean, literally authentic. The fact that something is only a myth doesn't mean you can't believe it. Many people, religious people, say, we know that our religious belief is based on myths, but they're good myths, and they help us to live better and give us a better expectation or hope of what will happen, for instance, after death. The other kind of myth would be the one in which what can't be proved scientifically can't be taken seriously, and since life after death has never been proved scientifically, though people have tried to do that, people who believe in ghosts or mediums or other ways of getting to the other side, as it's called, as if there is another side. They have often sought some scientific evidence or proof about life after death, and therefore that death isn't the end. The skeptical view might be just as much of a myth. Where does that leave us then? That could be one of the questions, and it's very relevant to the Seventh Seal, where you have the knight who is religious but craving some proof, and there's the squire who is scornful of all religion, who's lived through horrible things in the Crusades, and who is skeptical of any religious explanations, and the two are balanced against each other. All right? Does that help?
Yeah, sounds good.
And remember, technique as well as the form is relevant. The outside research, you said there are a couple of other things, have to be dealt with carefully and completely footnoted. And again, 14-point font so I can easily read it, and word count so I don't have to worry about the length. The minimum required length is 2,000 words, remember, but you can go beyond that. And should feel to do so if you think it's any good. If it isn't, that's not going to help you. All right, Catherine?
Well, for my paper, I was going to write about 8.5. And the thing
You finally got a copy?
Yeah, my DVD finally arrived on Friday. So my original topic got a little bit trashed because of the fact that what I remembered of the film from a year ago was a little different than when I rewatched the film and realized what the film is actually about. But so what I think I'm going to do, and what I've started to outline, was there are three main myths that I see, that are depicted through the protagonist's fantasies. The myth of his ideal woman, between the virgin, his wife, the whore, his mistress, and the ideal woman, Claudia. That's one myth. And then there's the myth of the Saragina, which is a religious, God and Satan, and love is a sin myth. And the last one, which is from his famous harem scene in the farmhouse, which is I'm not sure if I want to approach that particular aspect of the film as more of a harem sort of, what he believes love is or isn't, or I've read a few papers that say that is a scene that depicts Jung's idea of the anima, of his mind, basically, because it's all the women he's ever known. So I'm not sure about that last part, but it's...
Well, why can't it be taken as face value? It's a fantasy, and a typical male fantasy that all the women love him, because remember, however badly he treats them, there's something that he has which is very valuable to them, and they dote on him. He's the only male. It's his harem. This is a male daydream at a time when women were willing to tolerate such daydreams. I think it's a little harder for males to have them anymore because women won't play that game, don't have to, right? Why does Jung have to come into it?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Jung, you said, didn't?
I read one of the books I was reading through mentioned that there was some relation to. I'm not that familiar with the philosophical background for that, but they were saying that it sort of depicts his mind in the sense that the one she's a lounge singer or something. The girl with all the feathers is being sent upstairs because he's forgetting about her and she's no longer needed, and the girls who are no longer needed are sent upstairs. So it's sort of like his mind in the sense that these are the girls that he loves, and when they cease to be as important to him, they're sent sort of to this back area of his mind that he doesn't really think about. So I don't know if that's as important, but I do want to cover that scene because I think it's important.
No,
in
you're
his
working
perception of love.
Tell me what the outside reading is. You mentioned there are some.
But right now I have this stack of books, and I've sort of gone through them, and I've narrowed it down to a few. I don't remember the titles offhand because I'm working with about 5 different books, about a chapter in each of them that actually cover. They're books that cover a lot of Fellini's films, so there's about a chapter in each of them.
No, okay. No, that's good. I mean, you seem to be on the path.
And in general, how all these myths relate to the protagonist's understanding and acceptance of his love for the people that he cares about in his life, which is what the ending of the film is.
And how is the material specifically related to the course?
I'm trying to work back to that, because originally when I started working with the film, I was working from memory. I was going to write a paper about the pursuit of his ideal woman, which I figured could be related back to like the Pygmalion myth. But as it turned out, when I rewatched the film, most of the film is not really about the pursuit of an ideal woman. That's one part of the larger picture. So
What about the touchstone meaning and technique? You'll keep that in mind, I hope. What is it about the technique that conveys just the meaning that Fellini wanted, and how is it that meaning is dependent upon whatever technique is relevant? That's very important in understanding the nature of the course and developing the ideas of the course in your own way, together with the whole idea of film as a myth-making art. Right? Okay, but can we help? Does anybody else want to say anything? No, I think we're doing very well. Let me see about the time. The movie is about 90 minutes long. Could you check on that, Miguel?
Yeah, it's 96 minutes.
It is 90 minutes long. All right, so that we have to stop at 3:30, and so we do have time now. Okay, go ahead. Oh, I mean, anything else, Catherine? No. Well, then Carrie wanted to
So I watched The Seventh Seal. The first time I watched it, I found it very interesting. Watched it a few more times, and there's some points in it that I find extremely interesting. Well, first of all, with the knight and the squire, all the characters are extremely strong characters, and they're also flat throughout the entire movie. There is no change at all in any of the characters.
No what?
There's no change at all in any of the characters. And that's like most evidence.
Well, that's something you should argue.
Well, right. So in the final scene with Antonius Block, he has committed this act, which is save the family, and it seems like he said that was important to him in the confession scene, but still his lack of knowledge of God is making him entirely static, and that actually wasn't important to him. But at that moment, the other Joseph, I guess, Joff, his visions were, at the moment when Antonius Block was committing his important action, his visions were legitimized. And he early on had a vision of, because he sees death, and death is really playing him in chess. And early in the beginning of the movie, he had seen the Virgin Mary with Jesus, and in a sense, he had seen God, and if he had just talked with Antonius Block might have realized that God does make himself known at times. And that
that's an interesting point.
So,
I don't want to elaborate on that before some of you have seen the movie, but keep that in mind, the question of God making himself evident.
And so, in a sense, even though all the characters are flat and you can't identify with any characters and achieve growth in the movie through that, we sort of identify through the entire cast of characters, and Joseph is seen as early on he's called if he's says something about the fool and that being the human soul. Certainly you could play the human soul to Joff, and he survives. So in a sense, the human soul does survive. Is demonstrated by the movie. Another point I wanted to make, which is just structural, is when having this sort of, it's an allegorical framework and playing chess with death, but it seems as if death should be able to play a perfect game of chess, and that chess doesn't really reflect life, and that you can't really win. Winning in that game, at least as they say, then he lives, he doesn't die, but that doesn't really make sense, like death always wins.
Well, let's say that, the point is we don't know that much about death.
Right, we don't know that much about death.
Maybe death doesn't always win.
Right, maybe death doesn't always win.
You give me a good idea that I want to throw out for you. You read Pygmalion, and saw the movie. Another play of Shaw's is called Back to Methuselah. It's really not a play because it takes 13 hours to perform. And so there may have been one or two festival performances in the last 40, 50 years since it was written, but it isn't often performed in a 13-hour play. It consists in a number of segments that are really plays. And the idea is that Methuselah was the character in the Bible who lived to be 900 years. And so this is back to that kind of possibility. You all know about Methuselah? And in Porgy and Bess, the opera by George Gershwin, there's a song by the Sportin' Life is his name, who is a playboy, and it's an all-black cast, and he sings a kind of parody of a spiritual song, and the words are, it ain't necessarily so. The Bible tells you all sorts of things, but it ain't necessarily so. And one of the refrains is, Methuselah lived 900 years, Methuselah lived 900 years, but who calls that living when no gal will give in to no guy, what's 900 years? So it ain't necessarily so. But the back to Methuselah Shaw begins with Lilith, who was earlier than Adam and Eve, and along the way, people start living longer and longer, and it's a matter of will, and at some point somebody wills not to die, and thereafter they keep on not dying, and in the last act, the human race has conquered death. They can live forever. They work at all sorts of scientific problems, and like, for instance, childbirth taking place out of an egg, like a bird, instead of wasting all those precious years in gestation and childhood and development. So out of an egg, and this happens on the stage, something inside starts hammering at it, and out comes a young woman aged 18, fully formed and very advanced intellect, because they do it that way instead of waiting. So it's a little more like the way chicks can survive when they come out of the egg. So they're a very advanced civilization, and they're deathless. The only problem is they still are living in the body. So the big project that they're facing is how to get rid of the body completely and then be pure spirits floating forever in the atmosphere. All right? How did we get into this? How did I get launched on this? The idea of death. No, point is, what if we were a different kind of species? Since we're not that kind of species, and death is represented, there isn't a right way or wrong way. So there's no contradiction in just saying death is going to win out, so of course you'll finally win the chess game. Maybe this will be an innovation. The knight will defeat death in the chess game and keep on living. There's another myth for that, the myth of the Baron Munchausen, who doesn't die. And so this would be an example of that. You can't approach a fiction or a myth the way you would approach something that is an established truth, since the fiction and myth deals in imagination. And you can imagine people defeating death, both in chess and in never dying. Death sort of eventually says, well, I've got more important things to do and all sorts of other people to take to my kingdom. I'll leave you alone, and then he forgets about, and so on. You know? So there isn't a right way or a wrong way.
Well, I think death should always win, and therefore death
Should?
Yeah, I think death should.
I
think death should play the perfect game of chess in a sense, and that playing against chess. I mean, and the only reason why death is not playing the knight because he might lose. It's not like there's any risk involved. He's just playing it because he enjoys playing.
Okay, now,
Like
this is going to possibly ruin it for those who haven't seen the movie. No, not really. It's such a rich, wonderful movie. How does death win?
Well, it's at least
He what?
supposedly, it seems, we're given the impression that he learns of the knight's strategy through subterfuge.
By cheating.
By cheating, yeah.
Okay, so what's the significance of cheating?
I mean, I think that's pretty much just a joke. What's the significance of him using the cheating? I really think that's just a joke. I think that...
No, the knight is looking for any kind of glimmer of evidence about God. Only God would give him a sign. And then here's death. And he takes that as evidence of a sort. But if you think of death as not coming from God, but coming from nature, where everything dies, it's a kind of cheat. And so nature cheats us. It gives us the sense of buoyancy. joy, of happiness when things go well, right? At almost any age. And then all of a sudden, it pulls the rug from under you, and the doctor says, you've got a day to live. Nature is unscrupulous. Nature has no concern, apparently, with what's good or bad for the inhabitants of nature. It has bigger things to deal with, which is the survival of the species, the continuance of life, all kinds of considerations that enable it to sacrifice, the billions of baby oysters, or not oysters, turtles. Remember, who are in eggs in the sand, and they come up, and nature tells them to survive, you've got to run like hell to get into the water, and they all do it. They do it at the same time, and doing it at the same time makes them an attractive target, because look at all that free food lying around, and so the birds and other creatures descend upon them, and a very large number of them are destroyed before they get to the water, and then in the water a lot are destroyed by the sea lions and other creatures. So only a fraction ever survive, and yet the ones, if you ever see pictures of these wonderful young creatures running to get into that water, you think, what a sense of vitality, and then all of a sudden they're destroyed. Well, nature cheats us that way. It's no guarantee of it. It gives no guarantees. It encourages one, and then it knocks one down. It's the sort of thing that Orson Welles lamented, that somebody with his talents was encouraged to express them, and once he did, he was punished for that. Well, that's what nature always does. That could be what devil represents. What death represents. So worthy of your exploration would be, what is the meaning of death, and the way in which he agrees to play a game, which is a life-enhancing activity, with this noble warrior who is the knight. And can he be defeated? Can death be defeated? Can he not? That's worth exploring. In terms of the form, there's so much you could say about the seventh seal. Will you do that?
Yeah, I'm going to focus on. That's going to be part of my focus. And
what's outside?
And then for, I would like to develop some sort of overall vision of the meaning of death in the context of the film. There is no character. Or the meaning of life, in a sense, and there's no character really. They all have different views of the meaning of life and the meaning of death.
But one point you just now made in passing is very promising, very interesting, which I hadn't thought of, but I don't know that I agree, which is that there's no character development, that they're all flat.
Yeah. No, totally flat.
Now, what if deal with that in relation to other myths? Is that true of myth making to begin with? And second, there are developments in for instance, Jans, the poet who has the visions. He changes in the movie, and he at times is willing to make himself into a fool in the tavern just to survive, and yet he also has the noble vision of the Virgin. And at the end, he is the only one who sees death, except for the knight, but he does not die. Is that a way of saying art goes on? That's the development in his character that also has some great meaning to it. What it is for you to determine and analyze.
I don't think that necessarily makes him not flat. I think that we definitely learn more about him in a sense. But as a whole, he doesn't seem to undergo any sort of emotional alteration.
Well, you could take any view you want.
Yeah.
But bring in the extra research
Yeah, and
analyze it. More than you did on the first.
Yeah, for the extra research, I'm still not sure what I'm gonna. I don't have a good idea.
Well, there are lots written on Bergman. If you go to Roach, you'll see a shelf full of books about him, particularly this one, which is considered by many people the greatest movie ever made, always one of the top 10, and it's been around now for 50 years because it was made in the middle of the 1950s, 55, 54, around there. So you'll find lots of material,
Okay.
but you've got to search.
Okay.
Lauren?
I watched The Seventh Seal also, and
I'm listening.
I'm still kind of struggling with it. I've started writing about what is the meaning of life and how does for each character and how does this affect their outlook on
For
life.
each character.
Yeah, or
Give me an example.
Well, I'm kind of struggling with the actors, Mia and Joff. Like, it seems they're almost like blind faith. They're really the typical kind of.
They have faith in what?
In some, I'm not really sure if it's God or what it is. It just seems that they, like Mia always just says, "I'm so happy every day is like the next day." It seems like they don't really think about it. They just kind of accept it and.
Well, that's an interesting idea that they have faith, because maybe they have faith in the goodness of life,
Yeah, I'm not
because they
think
have
it's
a good
higher
life,
power necessarily.
and they have a beautiful baby, and they love each other, and they're artists who are devoted to their art.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And maybe you can't succeed as well as they do unless you do have some kind of faith, or if only faith in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure that it's a higher power that they have faith in, but it's,
Well, it may be faith in the Virgin, or something that of the sort that Job sees in his vision.
mm-hmm.
Have you done any outside research?
Yeah. I was going to look at probably one of the resources that you had in the Meaning of Life paper.
But also on the Seventh Seal research of the sort I just mentioned to Terry.
Okay.
You ought to get to work because there isn't much time really.
Yeah. Well, I kind of changed. I was starting to write on Dubliners, and then I watched The Seventh Seal, and that seemed a lot more appealing. So I'm kind of starting over. So.
All right. Anything anybody want to say that can be of help to Carrie or Lauren? All right, Lux.
Okay, so I'm writing about imagination. And
Throw your voice more. Okay.
I'm writing about imagination, and
You're not throwing it.
Okay, I'm writing about imagination, and the overall theme is how it adds or enhances meaning in life. And the two movies that I'm using are Life is Beautiful and Amelie. So in Life is Beautiful, I talk about how imagination is able to add meaning in such a way that it almost replaces.
What was your first paper about?
My first paper was that sexuality in Turn of the Screw.
About what?
Sexuality in Turn of the Screw.
What in terms of truth?
Sexuality.
Sexuality in the Turn of the Screw.
Turn of the Screw. Okay. Well, then this is a different topic.
Yeah, this is what.
And since you bring in Life is Beautiful, you're getting beyond the course requirements, which was what was needed. What about outside research?
So that I haven't decided on yet. I need to look for something still.
There is a DVD of Amélie and his bonus material.
Oh, I have that one actually.
Now, if the bonus material is really new and interesting, then that counts as some outside research, because you only had to watch the movie. In the case of Life is Beautiful, I assume there is already some kind of critical literature since it won the Academy Award. But you really have to focus on that. Hold on just a second, I want to keep watching your time. All right, so what are you going to do with those?
So with Life is Beautiful, I talk about how imagination is able to almost replace the meaning that would otherwise be present in life for the boy, at least, and also for the adults, because them telling the boy the story is kind of giving them meaning to their life as well. And in Amelie, I talk about more not how imagination replaces the meaning of ordinary life, but how it enhances it, especially in the case of Amelie because she's introverted, and it helps her experience things that she wouldn't otherwise experience.
I don't know quite what to say to help. Is there any way you can think of that the others or I can help you with the paper?
Right now, I just think I need to start writing because I have a sentence outlined for the life is beautiful part. I haven't really touched the Amelie part, and I think I just need to start writing. And as I write, I guess I can email you about questions.
Well, you definitely ought to get the DVD. It's on reserve in the film library.
Yeah, I own it.
Oh, you own it?
Yeah.
Fine, better yet. And see where that leads you. In the case of Amélie, there are so many interesting things that are cinematographically excellent. I mean, they're excellent cinematography. If you haven't dealt with that at all in the first paper, you could bring it in, but without that being the focus of the second paper, because the second paper has to go beyond the required work, right? But you could do a lot and see how it takes you into other areas. But as yet, you haven't said anything about writings that you've read that you're going to use.
At this point, well, I read your the chapter that you gave us in your book.
But that was required. That was required reading.
Right.
I think I also gave you the chapter on idealization, didn't I?
Yeah.
Did I give you either the chapter on consummation or no? I did. Yeah, but not the one on the aesthetic. Did I? That's another chapter in the same book, and it tries to bring the earlier chapters a little further, move them a little further. You might want to look at that. Okay. Peter?
I'm covering concepts of self-love and selfishness, sort of the contrast between them.
In relation to what?
In relation to Pride and Prejudice, the movie, which brings up a point. You told me you've seen the 1940 version of it. I haven't. There is also two other more recent versions, but I haven't been able to find the 1940 version anywhere. So
I can't believe that because
it's just
that's the one that's probably sold for $5 now. You could easily find it somewhere.
I could get it, but I can't get it mailed in time. That's the thing. It's only they're all online, and I only decided on last week, so that But
well, try the. Do you have access to the Boston Public Library?
no.
No. Is there any? Wait a minute. Anyhow, that would be in the film library. Did you go to?
At MIT, no. Well, I've been to like BU and MIT.
You went to the 4th floor of Building 14?
I searched for it online, and it didn't come out online.
I'm sure it's up there. I can't believe it's not up there.
Yeah, that wasn't there, and also your.
No, call up.
Okay, I will. Yeah, because I searched
Doug.
everywhere, but it wasn't. But maybe I should just go and talk to someone there.
Doug Purdy. Douglas Purdy.
Burgundy?
He's there right now because I picked up something from him before coming to class. And tell him you need it for this course and could you borrow it? And I can't believe that it isn't sitting there on the shelves. The 1940 Hollywood production of Pride and Prejudice. There may be a better movie. I don't know about the more recent ones, and so. But that's one I do know. So there's no reason not to use that.
Yeah.
It has Greer Garson in it, and I think Laurence Olivier. I'm not sure. It's a standard, successful Hollywood movie. It may have won some Oscars or other at the time. All right, but what are you going to do with this? Self-love?
Yeah.
And that?
Some of the other works were Harmony in Nature. Harmony of Nature.
What,
Your book, Harmony in Nature.
oh, you're going to use that?
Well-
No, but I mean, are you going to use Jane Austen, who wrote the novel that the
No,
movies
I'm
are
just
based
planning on
on?
using the movies.
Yeah,
for
there,
the
but it's all right to look at Harmony of Nature and Spirit, but it's thin in terms of the specific use that you made.
Right. Well, I don't know. You told me I should look at that last week. So I've been trying to look for that, but it's not in the library. It's listed as, I don't know. It's listed as in library, but the books aren't in
No,
there.
it's stolen. I'm very lucky about it. Or else it's in the Humanities Reserve Room. Did you try that?
Yeah, it's definitely not. I have it on waiting. I have it on search, actually. I put it on search a few times already.
But more
But-
important than those books of mine are film studies that deal with technique and that are about, for instance, the Hollywood movie. I'm sure there are books written about that. You should, in Roach, you should be at Roach. You should be able to find something on the Hollywood movie there.
Yeah.
So what you've told me now doesn't add up too much, so I'm a little worried.
Well, no, I mean, I'm trying to explain to you what
You haven't
I'm looking
written it
at.
yet.
No, I've looked at other works of Nietzsche and
No,
Freud.
no, you're getting too far afield. I think you've
Okay.
got to
Well, this is just these
zero in
things
on
that-
some topic that you can work on
Right.
concretely and in detail in relation to something that's relevant to philosophy and film.
Yeah. Well, the things I've been telling you, actually, you told me to look at last week. So
No, without, I have some suggestions, but most of the research is up to you.
right.
Because I don't want to tell you what topic you should follow. It's going to be something that matters to you.
Yeah.
And then you have to follow the trail to something that you will be proud of. No? Is there any specific question you want to ask now, right now?
No.
Can anyone else help Peter in this? Do you have any advice or anything you want to say? All right, the paper is due today, but I said I'd give you all an extension. The grades are due a week from today or tomorrow, and I need some time to do your papers justice and the papers of my other course. So I can't give you much of an extension. Going around the class, can you tell me two things? When you can finish it and get it to me. You're not writing a paper. You're not writing a paper. You're not writing a paper. No, you don't have to. It's just that I've had listeners who wanted to, and I graded them like everybody else's. But they were just listeners, like you. But there's no reason why you should. Two questions. One, when can you definitely get it to me? And two, ideally, how much time do you need? If you could do it and really do a good job, ideally, what would the date be at which you would hand it in? And I'll tell you as we go along what is possible and what is not possible. So why don't we start again with Miguel,
Thursday.
the latest,
Thursday.
and that is which?
This week.
Ideal or
Both.
both? All right. I think I ought to make a note of this for each of you. So, do you have a pencil? There's a pen. Do you have a pencil instead? Thank you. All right, Thursday. How about you, Edward?
I'd like to get them by Thursday, but my ideal due date would be Friday probably. Because I also have another pretty heavy lab report that's
No, I
due.
understand. No, you don't have to justify it. I appreciate and I sympathize with you at the time of strain and making do. Now I can't find your cards. Okay. What I'm going to do is put you down for Thursday, and if you really say, you get in touch with me and say I've finished it, but if I could have another day, then I'll see what state I'm in. Friday, I know I'm leaving town, so you may be in peril if you don't live up to these expectations. I think if I get your papers by Thursday, I can manage. Dave?
I can get to you by Wednesday. I guess the ideal would be Thursday.
Ideal?
Ideal would be Thursday, yeah.
All right, so it's Thursday also. Naturally, if I get it earlier, then I can have more time for that paper. If it's one among the others, I may get tired or one thing or another. Catherine?
I think I could get it in by Thursday, but ideally Friday. But if you're going out of town, I'll try my best for Thursday.
Okay. Carrie?
So I could get to you on Wednesday?
Great. Okay, that'll help.
Okay, but ideally Friday. Sounds like Wednesday.
No, don't make it Friday. Make it Wednesday or Thursday. But Wednesday would be better.
Okay.
But as you see, since I'm agreeing to other people getting it on Thursday, when I say it would be better, only in the sense that it would give you priority, but you won't be marked down because it comes in on Thursday, if it does. Lauren?
I can do it on Thursday, and I'm going to try really hard. Ideally, it would be Friday, but I'm going to try really hard to do it by Thursday.
No, I didn't say anything about Friday.
Ideally, it's Friday, but I'm going to really try to get it in on Thursday.
Okay, well, let's put you down for Thursday. Try for Thursday.
Is it Friday in the morning that you need it?
Yeah.
You're leaving Friday afternoon?
Well, but I'm going with other people and I don't know the time.
Okay.
Lux?
I was looking Friday as...
No, it's too late. Thursday?
Okay, so I'm not actually sure I can finish it by Thursday. But
Well, then you'll have to be in touch with me.
Okay.
Right? And Peter?
Thursday?
Thursday?
Yeah.
Don't let this discourage you, Peter, but I had the feeling that you really haven't made much progress yet, so
Yeah.
there isn't much time, and you've really got to
I have been looking around.
but no, you've got to not just look around, but
Yeah.
start writing it right and doing concrete research and know what you're going to do right away. All right? You all know how to reach me by email, and in terms of a crisis, you ought to write down my phone number. But I see that it's about time for us to go watch the film.
It's actually a little bit more than an hour and a half. Slightly more than anything, so.
Well, you're going to walk over. So why don't we terminate now? And let me, Ramon, say farewell for this course to the viewing audience out there in hyperspace. And I hope to see you again in another course. Bye-bye.